Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books that I review. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done listening to The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. This is book 6 of Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing this book, which is literally just right now. So I love this one. This is a pretty easy 5 out of 5, and one of the best books in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It's kind of right up there with the first book for me. I just love that first book so much. But yeah, it just captures so much of what I love about this genre. And I'm very excited that I'm now caught up with the series. I started the series less than a year ago, probably like 9 months ago or so. And I've been flying through the audiobooks, in part because the books are good. But I also, if you're familiar with my channel, I oftentimes take a long time to get through a series. I put months and months of gap in between books and series. But the audiobooks here are so dang well done. 𝗣𝘂𝐻𝐻 is the audiobook narrator, and he is perfection personified into an audiobook narrator. So yeah, the audiobooks are just so good that I've prioritized them so high up on my audiobook list that I've just kind of flown through them. This is by no means a perfect book, but for what it is, it's just this amazing adventure. And it's still wonderfully fun. I just can't stop smiling, having a good time and laughing and getting to know these characters and trying to figure out everything going on and just sit back and have a wonderful, wonderful time. For me, it feels like Matt Dinniman, the author here, has really figured out his formula in a really great way. And I think many times when authors write based on a formula, it just becomes repetitive. And saying that an author writes based on a formula would be a negative thing. But for me, in this story, in this world, it's honestly needed in a series like this, so that these like wild and crazy concepts that I think this series is most well known for, it just needs a little bit of structure so that it's the structure that's kind of tried and tested. I mean, the set pieces here are so huge, whereas in the previous books, we got the books culminating into a big event at the end of the book. That seems to be what's going on. But lately what we're getting is multiple climaxes throughout the story. I mean, after each third of the book, we get like this enormous set piece that would be fitting for the end of any great novel. But we get multiple of them. It's just such a great surprise, and it works just so very, very well. And so, yeah, I find what's going on lately in these Dungeon Crawler Carl books has been awesome. Up until this point, I've been giving the books a really high score and then a little bit less score, and then really high and a little bit less. And this is the one that breaks the mold, because I also gave 5 stars to the one immediately preceding this. I forget the name right now. They're all pretty zany names. It's hard for me to remember them. I didn't actually put a review out for that one, at least not publicly. I did a review, and my microphone was turned off. And so it was just like my camera audio, which is truly atrocious. And my autofocus was messed up and like focused on the books behind me. And so if one of those things happened, I think I'd push through and just put it out. But I was so embarrassed by the quality of my review that I only put it up on Patreon. But rest assured, the previous book was a 5 out of 5. I loved it. This one's even better. I mean, this was just epic and huge, and it felt like, once again, just turning off your brain a little bit. And again, I don't mean this in a negative way. I say this from a huge place of heartfelt warmth, but turning off your brain, enjoying one of those, like, it reminds me of one of those like AAA blockbuster movies where that there might be some major critiques from like very serious film critics. But if you're just going in there, not trying to think too hard, just sitting back, wanting to have a good time, and realizing what it is that this author or film director or whatever medium you're getting a story is promising to the audience, then it delivers on that, and it's just such a more magical and fun experience, and I love it, because these books are not technically good. They're crazy. It's just like throwing a bunch of S on a wall, it feels like, and almost everything sticks. I mean, the central concept of this story, if you're not familiar by this point, and I realize that this is the sixth book here, but you'd be surprised how many people watch these reviews and have never read a series. And after like my fourth or fifth review on a series, they're like, okay, finally, I'll go read it. I keep watching these things. I'll do it. So backing up a tiny bit, this story is my like 60-second elevator pitch for this story is that you've got this character, Carl, who wakes up in the middle of the night, and he finds that every building has all of a sudden been sucked up into the earth. Everybody inside of them has died. Everybody that was outside at the time lives. They get a message from these alien overlords that say you are part of a galaxy-wide game show. And everyone's, more than trillions, whatever number is more than trillions, are watching you, and you're going to have to fight and go down a series of levels, kind of like, Diablo-ish, where you keep going down and down and down into, hellish landscapes and dungeons, and fighting these monsters to try to make it to the end. Nobody's ever done this in the history of ever that has been a part of this game show, but they're going to give it a shot. And that's what the story is. And so each book essentially is a floor per book, and they're all themed, and it's kind of Dungeons and Dragons-y, lit RPG in the sense that, there's these skill points that you get assigned, and every weapon has plus X strength, or has these magical properties to it and upgrades, and feels very video gamey, but in a book format. And that's the basic kind of premise of this story. And so that's silly, right? That's ludicrous. And I said in my first video, and again I said it from a place of kindness, but it's dumb, but I love it. And it leans into that dumbness, and it leans into this over-the-top ridiculousness, while somehow being balanced out by being a very dark story, but also a very humorous one at the same time. And I love it when authors can kind of pull that off. And this author really does, because these are very dark. I mean, the concept I just explained to you, even though it's kind of crazy, is very, very, very dark. And it leans into that, and people are dying. People close to the main character are dying. The character is having to make these horrible moral choices about, do I kill this person? Do I save this person? How do I do it? Why do I do it? All these different sorts of things. And he's a very well-intentioned person. He goes along this journey with his cat, Princess Donut, and the cat can talk. And because in the dungeon it got the ability to express itself, and they're this awesome duo, and they, make friends along the way, and it's wild. And so technically it's not a great story, but it just works. Everything works, and leaning into that works, and the humor is really, really, really good. I find it also amazing in this story, particularly in this one, and a little bit in the ones kind of leading up to this point, but we're getting a greater emphasis on what's going on in the universe and the bigger story beyond just this dungeon. This was always part of the story that I wished would be here more, and it's so great to see that come to fruition. No longer is Carl just trying to survive this dungeon and be the last man standing. He's trying to destroy everybody who's wronged him in this universe by making this game in the first place. That's awesome. That's what you want as the reader, because you're so pissed off at these people. You don't want him just to win. You want him to wreak vengeance on everybody that has been committing these atrocities. And so we're starting to get, as you're reading this, you're like, this is impossible. It's this guy that at best he can kind of save his planet, but he's so far underpowered compared to everybody else that it would be kind of silly to have it be otherwise. But now it's making sense. Of course it is, right? But it's now making sense, and it's fun to start to piece this together, and you're trying to figure out, like, how is he going to do this? Because you know that he is. I mean, you understand the basic premise of this book, that he is going to stop everybody from doing this. But being able to watch it in real time and sit back and enjoy the ride is just great. Now, this book in particular, every book has differences to them that really make them stand out for the theme of them. And this one is really about card building and deck building in a Magic the Gathering type of way. I don't want to get into the details of it or the plot points that it hits, but you along this game, in this floor, you are collecting these cards, you are fighting people and turning them into cards and using them in your deck. It's fun. Now, I was never a deck builder type of guy. I never got into the Pokemon games or, Magic or any of those, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or stuff like that. Never got into it. But I think the main reason I didn't was because I didn't have friends that did. That concept always intrigued me. I wish I was the nerdy one in my friend group, and I was sports playing guy that did all this cool stuff, but on the back end, I'm reading, reading fantasy books and doing really dorky stuff. And I just never had anybody do that with me. So being able to read it was fun, more fun for me than I think if I didn't have that passion behind the scenes that I kind of already was into it. But if you have been a card player, I think this book would be like above the top for how cool it is to see that kind of coming out in a literary format. Now, that was also the one downside I'd have with this book too, is that the rules along with this card system were very complex, and it became hard to follow a little bit. My brain kind of glossed over some of the details, and it made me kind of pull myself out a little bit of the fun during that kind of gaming system that was going along. It just felt like, every card you saw was unique. And so you didn't know what they could do, or you kind of start forgetting the cards that Carl's has that he can do, and Donut's the one with the cards, and so she's collecting cards that you don't even know about, so then she starts using them, and it just becomes kind of convoluted. I like using these books as background, for playing video games and driving and stuff like that, where I'm doing something else at the same time. And it's getting to the point where it's getting a little too complicated for me to be able to do that, so I'm having to kind of just focus on the audiobook. Now, that's fine. I think, clearly these books aren't written with what I am using them for in mind. But be that as it may, I am doing that. And so it is like, man, I'm really having to put more brain power than I wanted towards just following along with the rules. But that's fine. And it still, didn't take me out from giving this 5-star by any stretch of the imagination. This book had all of the same humor that you would expect out of these stories. It just continues and really well. I think the humor is even getting better. Or I'm just getting so used to it and expecting it that when we get that style of humor, a little juvenile type humor, but I like it. It's good. If I heard it all the time, I'd be kind of like over it in my real life. But to have this be the one venue where I get this type of humor, it works awesome. I feel like we're also getting a lot more character depth than we're getting in the beginning of the story. Like, we're actually getting a focus on people besides Carl. Like, Donut has always been, a star of the show, but you haven't really got to understand what makes her tick and why and her emotional state of being and these things. And now you're getting it. And now it feels like she's the star she's the real, duo star of this book now, along with Carl. And it's great to be able to get that emotional attachment to this character and many of the side characters as well that I don't really want to bring up to ruin anything. So I've talked a long time here. Go check out the series. It's really good. And it feels so silly. And I put off reading it because it seems dumb. Just the name of the book itself, Dungeon Crawler Carl, that seems dumb, but it's not. It works, and it's deeper than you think it is. And if you have a choice, check out the audiobooks. They are so, so, so good. And you also can, besides just the regular audiobooks that are on Audible, if you go to the Sound Booth Theater Live website and check out Dungeon Crawler Carl, they do this thing called, I think it's audio immersive something. I'm messing it up. I should have memorized this before I did this video. But it's like a bunch of different voice actors. Every voice actor is unique to a character in the book, and they have sounds in the background and some music, and it makes it like it's a play going on while you're reading. I've not done the whole thing like that. I've listened to part of the first book like that. I've gone back and listened to it, and I regret not doing it earlier. It is so, so, so good. Only the first book's available, but I believe what I heard from Jeff, the audiobook narrator, was that it was successful enough to kind of keep going and do the next book. Hopefully that's the case, because God, it's good. So before I finish this off, let's talk about who I think this book should read this. And quite frankly, I think anybody but the most pretentious of fantasy fans will get enjoyment out of this. I mean, there are, if you're kind of a book snob and a prose snob and you can't, let that go for a book, then you're going to have a bad time. But if you can turn that part of your brain off and just say, I'm going to lean into it, I'm going to have fun, then, man, you're in for a good time. So that is it for me. Thank you for sticking to the end of this review. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗓𝗏𝗏cia, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tay C, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Harry B, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Philippe, Sky, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.